You've probably seen it more times than you can count. And maybe you've done it yourself on a bad day. Someone uses the bathroom, walks out, and just leaves. No soap, no water, no pause, like nothing happened. And what's unsettling isn't only the hygiene, it's the psychology of it. Because hand washing is one of the simplest public health behaviors we know, and yet the human mind still finds a way to rationalize skipping it. Not because people are evil, not because people want to make others sick, but because the brain is a master at turning short term comfort into a story that sounds like logic. If you're watching this, I want you to notice your first reaction: disgust, anger, judgment, maybe even a weird kind of fear. That reaction makes sense because your hands are one of the main ways the outside world gets inside you. You touch a door handle, a phone, a steering wheel, a shopping cart, your own face, and your body treats it like normal life. But the microscopic world doesn't care about normal, it cares about contact, and basic hand washing is strongly linked to reducing illness. Community hand washing education has been associated with reductions in diarrhea and respiratory illness, and the figures aren't small. And yet, people still don't wash. So the real question becomes, what has to be going on inside someone's mind for them to walk away from the sink like it's optional? One of the biggest answers is that human beings are not wired to fear what they can't see. If your hands look clean, your brain starts to treat them as clean. That's not science fiction, that's perception bias. We're visual creatures, we respond to dirt we can see, grime we can feel, smells that offend, but germs don't announce themselves that way. So the risk feels imaginary, and the brain treats imaginary risks like background noise. This is why people are far more likely to wash when their hands are visibly dirty than when they're just leaving a restroom. The mind doesn't feel the threat, so it doesn't pay the cost. And make no mistake, the brain experiences hand washing as a cost. It's time, it's an effort, it's an interruption, it's wet sleeves, it's dry, cracked skin in winter, it's the sensory discomfort of soap texture or strong fragrance. For some people, it's even painful if they have eczema or dermatitis, because frequent washing can aggravate the skin barrier. When people skip, part of them is often chasing relief, not filth. The problem is that relief is immediate and consequences are delayed, and humans are famously terrible at delayed consequences. We'll trade tomorrow's health for today's comfort without even realizing we're making a trade. That leads to another powerful force: optimism bias. Most people walk around with the quiet belief that bad outcomes happen to other people, not because they're arrogant, but because this belief keeps them functional. If you felt vulnerable all day, you'd never leave your house. So your brain quietly edits reality. I'm probably fine. Nothing happened last time. I never get sick. That inner voice is soothing, and it's also dangerous because hand washing isn't about one dramatic moment. It's about probability, it's about repetition, it's about reducing risk over thousands of tiny contacts. Hand washing can prevent about 30% of diarrhea related sickness and about 20% of respiratory infections. And here's where it gets darker, because skipping hand washing isn't always about ignorance. Sometimes it's about identity. Some people, especially in certain cultures and subcultures, associate hygiene habits with softness, anxiety, or even weakness. They don't say it out loud, but they live it. Washing can feel like admitting vulnerability, admitting that the world can contaminate you. If you've built your self-image on being tough, unbothered, above it, the sink becomes a weird kind of threat. You're not just washing your hands, you're contradicting your persona. Other times, skipping is about rebellion. Reactance is the psychological impulse to resist when you feel controlled. The more you feel nagged, shamed, or policed, the more your brain wants to prove it can do what it wants. You see this with all kinds of health behaviors. The moment something becomes a moral lecture, some people dig their heels in. They don't experience wash your hands as care. They experience it as being talked down to, and the easiest way to reclaim control is to skip the behavior and act like it doesn't matter. Then there's the simplest and most common reason of all: people are distracted. In real life, nobody is walking around as a calm, rational decision maker. They're stressed. They're late. They're thinking about money, relationships, work, their phone buzzing, the next task, the next problem. Hand washing is a small behavior that requires a moment of attention, and attention is one of the first things to collapse under stress. You don't skip because you made a decision. You skip because you never fully arrive in the moment. Your body left the room while your mind was already somewhere else. This is why habit matters so much. If hand washing is a deeply ingrained routine, you do it even when you're tired and distracted. If it's not a routine, it becomes optional in the exact moments you need it most, when your life is messy. School and early care programs that promote hand hygiene can result in less gastrointestinal and respiratory illness and fewer missed days. Now, I want to talk about something people don't like to admit. Some hand washing avoidance is rooted in disgust sensitivity, but not in the way you'd expect. You might assume people don't wash because they aren't disgusted enough. Sometimes the opposite is true. Some people avoid washing because the entire process makes them think about contamination more. Touching the faucet, touching the soap dispenser, touching the paper towel lever, feeling the water, smelling the soap, noticing the bathroom air, noticing other people's splashes. Suddenly their mind is flooded with images of germs, and their coping strategy is to minimize contact with the whole environment. They rush out as fast as possible. It's not logical, it's avoidance behavior. The sink becomes part of the dirty zone, and the brain chooses escape over hygiene. There's also a social layer. People mirror what they see. If you grow up in a household where hand washing is non-negotiable, it becomes normal. If you grow up where it's inconsistent, you internalize that inconsistency as acceptable. In public spaces, norms matter too. If a restroom environment feels neglected, if soap is missing, if towels are empty, if the sink looks grimy, it sends a message. Nobody cares here. And when nobody cares, people behave as if nobody cares, even if you personally do. And sometimes the barrier isn't psychological at all. It's access. Globally, 1.7 billion people still lacked basic hygiene services in 2024, including 611 million people with no hand washing facilities at all. If you've never had to ration water, if you've never had to choose between soap and something else your family needs, it's easy to moralize. But for many people, hand washing isn't a simple, effortless decision. It's a resource problem, and resource problems shape habits, which then follow you into every space you enter. But even in places where access isn't the issue, there's another psychological trap. People overestimate what a quick rinse does. A fast splash with water can feel like, I did something, and the brain loves partial compliance. It loves the feeling of having checked a box. But effective hand washing emphasizes soap and adequate rubbing because the mechanical action matters. And the reason public health agencies keep repeating this isn't that they enjoy scolding, it's because the evidence behind hand washing is strong. Hand washing education in the community has been associated with reducing diarrhea by about 23% to 40%, reducing respiratory illnesses by about 16% to 21%, reducing school days missed due to gastrointestinal illness by about 29% to 57%, and reducing diarrheal illness in people with weakened immune systems by about 58%. Now I want you to sit with the most chilling part. People who skip often aren't thinking about other people at all, not out of cruelty, but out of tunnel vision. In a stressed society, many people move through the world in survival mode. They're trying to get through the day. Their nervous system is narrowed, so the idea that their hands are a bridge between bodies doesn't enter consciousness. And yet, from a health standpoint, hand hygiene is not only about protecting yourself, it's about protecting others, especially the vulnerable. Infants, older adults, people with compromised immune systems, people recovering from illness, people whose bodies can't afford a little bug. This is also why hand hygiene is treated as such a core practice in healthcare settings where the stakes are highest and the vulnerable are concentrated. Hand hygiene improvement programs can prevent up to about half of avoidable infections acquired during healthcare delivery. That's not small. That's the difference between a routine hospital stay and a complication that changes a life. And if hand hygiene can be that powerful in the most controlled environments we have, think about what it means in these messy, casual environments of everyday life, where people touch everything and rarely think about it. So why do some people still not wash? Even knowing all this. Because information is not the same thing as integration. You can know something intellectually and still not feel it. Emotionally, you can know that hand washing reduces illness and still skip when you're late. You can know and still be depressed, numb, apathetic, moving through life with diminished self-care. Some people don't wash because they don't feel worthy of care. Some people don't wash because they don't feel anything, and if that sounds dramatic, it's not. Low motivation and reduced self-maintenance can be part of mental health struggles, burnout, and chronic stress. In those states, hygiene becomes one more thing the brain drops to preserve energy. And then there's the private, uncomfortable truth. Some people don't wash because they simply haven't been socially penalized enough for it. They get away with it. Nobody calls them out. Or if someone does, they laugh it off. Humans are shaped by consequences, and when a behavior has no immediate consequence, it can persist forever. Most illness is delayed, invisible, and hard to trace. You don't see a direct line from "I didn't wash" to "someone got sick." That missing feedback loop lets the brain pretend the behavior is harmless. If you're listening and you're thinking, okay, but how bad is it really? I want you to understand what the evidence-based message actually is. It's not that hand washing is magic, it's that it measurably reduces risk, preventing about 30% of diarrhea-related sickness and about 20% of respiratory infections is not a vibe, it's a measurable difference. This is why hand washing is constantly emphasized during outbreaks and why it remains a basic recommendation across public health guidance. It's low cost, high impact, and brutally underestimated. So now let's make this personal, because this topic is not really about people out there. It's about you too, in the moments you don't want to admit, the times you thought, I barely touched anything, the times you were rushing, the times you were alone and felt like it didn't matter, the times you convinced yourself you were the exception, and maybe you were fine. That's the trap. The brain uses every time you were fine as proof that you'll always be fine. And that's exactly how preventable illness keeps circulating quietly through ordinary people who don't feel like villains. If you want the real psychological takeaway, it's this. Hand washing is not a hygiene issue first. It's a reality acceptance issue. It's accepting that your body is connected to other bodies in ways you can't see, and that your smallest behaviors can ripple outward. It's accepting vulnerability without turning it into paranoia. It's accepting responsibility without turning it into shame. And it's choosing to do something mildly inconvenient because you understand that inconvenience is part of living in a shared world. Because the next time you see someone walk past the sink like it's nothing, what you're really witnessing is not just bad hygiene. You're witnessing a mind choosing comfort, distraction, denial, identity, or rebellion over an invisible threat. And the invisible threat is exactly what makes it eerie. You don't see the consequences. You just see the person. You just see the hand. And you don't know where that hand is going next.